Hello there, everybody, and welcome back to Tech Republic. Thank you for joining us for today's webcast, Konica Minolta on transforming enterprise IT through cloud computing. My name is James Hillier. Glad to be on board as your moderator for today's event. Got a group of people on board that I would like to introduce you to, starting off with Serena Satyasai. She is with the Product Marketing Group with Google, a friend of Tech Republic's, and back with us for today's webcast. Serena, thanks for being on board.
Thanks, James.
And our guests today, who we'll be hearing a majority of content from, are as follows. Cathy Lilli is on board with us, Director of Enterprise Infrastructure Services with Konica Minolta Business Solutions USA. And Cathy, thank you for taking time for joining the conversation today.
Good day, James. We're happy to be here.
And Chris Henry is here as well, Manager Messaging and IT Security, again, with Konica Minolta Business Solutions USA. And Chris, appreciate the time, man.
Thanks, James. Happy to be here.
Want to share with the audience kind of what we're going to be doing here for the next hour or so. We're going to start off with an overview of Google Apps, and we'll really get into our living, breathing case study here with the Konica Minolta team of Chris and Cathy. Then we do have planned a good 15 or so minutes for Q&A, and we often get a lot of great questions and comments from our Tech Republic audience on these events. So folks, get those in early and often. Use that Ask a Question box, lower portion of the player. Make sure you click that Ask Bubble, and we'll get you queued up and address as many questions as possible. One of the things we're going to do a little audible here right now. We're going to bring up a poll question, and this is going to determine how much time we need to share with you up front here on kind of an overview of Google Apps. So what is your awareness level? Are you not familiar? Somewhat familiar? Maybe you're in an evaluation stage right now, either looking for a near-term solution, or you're looking really as Google Apps as maybe a longer-term strategy for your organization. And maybe you're also already a Google Apps customer, and we've been seeing more of that as we've been showing these types of events here at Tech Republic over the last several months. So go ahead and share that. We have a couple other poll questions that we have planned for later in the presentation as well. And again, those will come right into your player. So as they come up, go ahead and select your answer, click that submit button, we'll get you queued up, and then we'll be sharing those with the audience here so you can all see kind of where you stand with other folks. One of the other things I encourage you to be taking a look at is the related resources on the right-hand side of the player, and over there is where you're going to be able to get some more information. Maybe if you're an Exchange customer, you can get some information about making the change from Exchange over to Apps, or if you're a Notes customer, you can do that as well. Along with all the questions that we're going to be taking, we do want to try and get as many answers out there as possible today, but questions that we don't address, what we'll be doing is forwarding them on to Serena and the team at Google. If another thing you can do to be proactive is click on that bottom link, the Speak with an Account Manager today, and that will go ahead and get you over to an area at Google where you can go ahead and share a question or comment and have team members there get back directly with you. So with that, what I want to do one final kind of refresh on that poll question here. And Serena, as I'm looking at things, we're seeing that with this audience today, seems like most of the folks are kind of in the somewhat familiar with the value. So I think what that gives us is that we can probably spend about 5 to 7 minutes here kind of giving an idea to the group here what solutions Google has for IT out there. So at this point, I want to turn things over to you so we can kind of dive into some of that material. Again, folks, keep the questions and comments coming into us so that we can address those throughout the presentation. And with that, Serena, let me turn it over to you.
Great, James. Thanks. Let me go over Google Solutions for IT before we dive into Google Apps. Many of you may not be familiar with the fact that Google has been providing solutions for businesses for many years. Our first and flagship product was actually the Google Search Appliance, which allows you to leverage the Google Search algorithms behind your firewall to help your employees be more productive in searching perhaps across multiple content repositories that you may have. We've also offered our Google Search algorithms in hosted products called Google Site Search and Google Commerce Search that enables you, particularly if you have a content-rich or commerce/retail-rich website, to enable your website visitors to more easily find content, again leveraging the Google algorithms. Our Maps and Earth product leverage what many of you may already be familiar with in terms of Google Maps and Google Earth from a consumer standpoint, but offer the ability for businesses to do your own mashups, or basically integration of your own data. So with Google Maps, we have many customers, for example, who may do asset tracking to plot on the map in the country, et cetera, where their fleet of trucks may be, or other types of assets. And we've also had other customers do more interesting integration of Google Maps in terms of their frontline products. Google Earth is an application that you can use particularly if you're a government customer, for example, to map your information services. And we've had the state of Alabama do something really interesting where they worked across all of their state and county departments to provide a fully mapped view of the state of Alabama. So everything from cell phone towers to manhole covers, et cetera. That's really been enabling them to better plan responses in case of natural disasters or other types of emergencies. Google acquired Postini about 3 years ago, and it's leading cloud-based anti-spam, antivirus solution as well as our archiving solution. And since then, we've incorporated our antivirus, anti-spam, and other security solutions into Google Apps, which we'll talk a little about in a second, but also offer these as standalone products. And Konica Minolta was actually a Postini customer. We've certainly seen many people who want to try out cloud computing begin at the very least with fighting viruses and spam in the cloud to get that burden off of your network, and then perhaps moving over to Google Apps. And then let me dive into Google Apps. Google Apps Premier Edition provides a suite of messaging and collaboration applications that power your domain. So Gmail is probably the application that all of our customers implement first and foremost. And it gives your employees a 25 gigabyte inbox, and there's built-in spam protection. Of course, it provides you the ability to for employees to search across their email inbox. And we've had one customer say, he basically uses it like a database with his hundreds and thousands of email messages that he's collected over the years. Integrated into that is a calendaring function and also instant messaging function. All of these applications are browser-based, so if you wish, you can simply deploy a browser and have all of these applications be integrated to your corporate identity. We also provide a suite of applications that enable your employees to collaborate more effectively in real time. And what we mean by that is, for example, with Google Docs, which is an online suite of word processing spreadsheet presentations, you can have multiple editors editing the same document at the same time. And it really helps improve teamwork, whether it's within a department, across departments, across offices, or even across countries. And we also, of course, make sure that you have the control if you want for sharing that document with or without, with people either inside your domain or even outside your domain if you wish. Google Sites provides easy web publishing, basically wiki-type functionality, again, to help improve teamwork. And again, those are permission-based. And again, you can decide whether that functionality is going to live just within your domain or if you're going to allow your employees, for example, to use these products to collaborate perhaps with customers and suppliers and other types of folks. And then lastly, Google Video for Business is essentially a YouTube for your domain. Again, it enables you to share videos within your domain, and it's also secure and permission-based as well. All of these applications are provided and delivered by Google, so they're in the cloud. Disaster recovery, usage reporting, content monitoring, and filtering are also included. And for Google Apps Premier Edition, you get customer support 365 24/7 and a 99.9% uptime SLA. We also provide integration APIs, and you'll probably hear from many customers that they leverage them to do things like single sign-on. And you can use those APIs to integrate with other applications. So for example, Salesforce.com has already pre-built an integration into their CRM system. There's a lot in Google Apps Premier Edition. I've only just kind of gone over the highlights. For more details, feel free to follow up at our website that I've listed below.
Trina, we see some prices on the screen right now. Already Bruce with a question here. Any difference in cost for nonprofit education organizations or private schools?
Yes, that's actually a great question. I always get that. Google Apps Premier Edition is about $4.17 per user per month and $50 per user per year. If you are an EDU or a 501c3 nonprofit based in the United States, you can access our Google Apps Education Edition, and that's actually $0 cost. The features are slightly different. Instead of 25 gigabytes of storage, you get 7 gigabytes of storage, but it's, for the most part, very similar. So feel free to search for Google Apps Education Edition if you're a U.S.-based 501c3 or an educational institution.
Bruce, thanks for the question. Folks, keep those questions and comments coming in. Again, we'll mix them throughout the rest of the presentation, also stack up some for our Q&A session at the end of the event here. So with that, Serena, let me put it back in your hands.
Okay. I do see a question about nonprofits in Canada, and we don't offer that yet to nonprofits in Canada, so apologies for that. Okay, one last thing before I hand it over to Cathy and Chris is we have also, of course, tools and services, as James had mentioned, if you're migrating from another system. And we, of course, many of our customers are migrating from Microsoft Exchange or Lotus Notes Domino or Novell GroupWise. In the appendix, we have included a reference sheet to the types of tools that are available for doing data migration. And of course, if you're on any other system or a web-based email system, we provide easy IMAP tools too. I already mentioned the integration APIs before. I'll just talk a little bit more about interfaces and mobile. As an internet company, Google wants to make sure you have the choice that you need to work with our applications in the way that you want. So we have provided things like Google Apps Sync from Microsoft Outlook. If your employees want to, for example, continue to use Outlook as their local email client, you can sync it to Gmail in the background if you wish. With that said, we find that most of our customers actually do go to the web-based interface for Gmail because it does things like integrate instant messaging into the same window and enables you to do some neat customizations with gadgets and things like that. And of course, we want to make sure things are as easy to access as possible, whether you're at home or at work or actually even on the road. So we provide cross-platform support for your employees, whether they're on BlackBerries or Android phones or iPhones, etc. We also even provide SMS notifications, for example, for just regular phones and syncing with your calendar. There's a lot of information to kind of go through if you're at that stage of the decision-making process on a website that we've put together called deployment.googleapps.com. And I, again, encourage you to reach out to that site if you have more questions in that regard. And with that, I will turn it over to Cathy and Chris.
Thank you, Serena. Hi, everyone. This is Cathy Lilli, and Chris and I today will be sharing with you KMBS's journey to Google. We thank you for spending the time with us today. Konica Minolta Business Solutions is a U.S.-based organization from our parent company in Japan. And what we do today is we sell, service, and distribute print products and solutions. And our products range from the desktop to the print shop. We are headquartered in Ramsey, New Jersey. We have 6,000 employees and over 140 locations based in the U.S. We have 350 dealer partners. And Konica, at this point, our products are doing very well, and we're very happy we're positioned in the marketplace. We at Konica Minolta are the result of many merged organizations. The largest two well-known were Konica and Minolta, but also over the last 5 years we've acquired many businesses, including the list that you're seeing here on the slide. Use Callahan, Danka, Albin, Frontier, and a sister company of ours, the Printing Company. The KMBS environment consisted of a Lotus Notes backend with a combination of many front-end clients, so Lotus Notes, Outlook, and Outlook Express. Many of these subsidiaries that you see listed here were Exchange Server backend with Outlook Client. So Konica Minolta was really faced with a challenge, and that was we had multiple different desktop platforms, which caused the deployment of laptops and desktops to be extremely challenging. We lacked full functionality across the enterprise. We couldn't do calendar sharing or scheduling, which caused really a hole in productivity across the organization. We had an inability to really trace messages completely through the Konica Minolta system with the Exchange systems as well as the Lotus Notes systems. We had many formatting differences. So when an email was received at the client side, it looked different if you were a Lotus Notes client versus an Outlook client. This caused a lot of confusion with our customers. It caused confusion with marketing because they couldn't deliver a single platform and a single message to our entire population of end users. And the provisioning, as I spoke, of a new employee coming into the organization was very manually intensive. We would have to understand exactly what business unit they were working for and then determine which client that they were to get.
And Cathy, you're laying out that typical scenario that IT has been seeing when you, again, have so many of these merged systems of spending so much time putting out fires, running after problems, not being able really to innovate and lead the business forward, but just dealing with this kind of stuff. And I know a lot of our audience, it's the same thing they're facing too. It's just such a pain to keep tracing after and chasing after those problems.
That's absolutely correct. And as you said, the overhead was really cumbersome, and it really didn't provide any value to the business other than to confuse everybody. We were also faced with some challenges from one of our mergers. We were about to close a data center, and that data center hosted 4 Exchange servers. We needed to make a decision as to what our direction was going to be going forward. We also had our Lotus Notes license renewals up for renewal. So we had a lot of pressure to make a decision back in the September timeframe of 2009. So obviously the goal, as James just said, was to solve these problems. We had to provide an ability to get everybody on the single platform. Our goal was to do a web-based platform. We weren't 100% comfortable about how our end users were going to receive a web-based platform. We had a very tight implementation time frame. That data center I spoke about was going to be closed in March of 2010. We obviously had to be very mindful of cost, as well as some of the social networking tools, which I'll talk about in a minute.
Hey, Cathy, was this going to be one of the first moves for KMBS that moved kind of to the cloud and to the web, or had this been done in some other areas, so this wasn't kind of uncharted territory? You had some idea of what you were getting in for?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, first of all, we had done Postini in the web, and we had been a Postini customer for about 1.5 years.
Okay.
And we were 100% satisfied with that solution. And we were thrilled to have a lot of those emails not hit our network. There were bad emails anyway. Nobody wanted to see them, so we were thrilled at the results there. Secondarily, our CRM solution is an on-demand solution, and that had also been in place for at least 1 year in the organization. So we had some comfort level with cloud computing and understood the benefits and the negatives both, but we weren't 100% comfortable of doing that same solution, quite frankly, with either Lotus Notes or Exchange. We felt that they really hadn't been in that marketplace long enough. So the analysis we did was Lotus Notes, Exchange, and Google. And from our environment, it was Lotus Notes. It was a Lotus Notes upgrade to their most recent platform, as well as an increase of about 2,000 users onto that platform. And that would have been email and calendar only. Or convert the entire organization to Exchange. And in both those, that IBM and Microsoft solution, we did look to see if we should go cloud-based. But again, this was September of 2009, and neither one of them were really ready with those solutions. So in both those scenarios, they would have been in-house in our data center.
And about how long was your decision process? Was it 3 weeks, 3 months? What did you spend time-wise to put on that?
So the Exchange and Lotus Notes evaluation, quite frankly and sadly, probably had been being evaluated for about 2.5 years.
Ooh.
Google entered about a year before we made the Google decision. We did go in and speak to Google and try and understand that solution. And at the time, we weren't interested. But in the summertime of 2009, we again re-entertained the Google solution. So they were in the evaluation for about 4 months. Tops, I would say 4 months before we made the decision.
As we see here, going Google was the decision that was made.
Correct.
We're going to look at some of the benefits. Again, folks, keep your questions and comments coming in. I'm seeing some good ones. There's some things about security already, whether or not folks can use their BlackBerries, et cetera. So see a lot of good stuff, Mark, Sandeep, and others. So keep the questions coming in. Kathy, let me put it back in your hands. Let's talk about some of the benefits that you ultimately saw you were going to get then from Google.
Okay. The one thing on the slide we're looking at, I did just want to point out to everybody, is our analysis that we went through was for Exchange, Lotus Notes, and Google, and it was very focused on email and calendar. We knew and were very interested in a lot of these social networking tools and collaboration tools. Whatever email and calendar platform decision we made, the additive solutions were going to have to be put on over time to provide all the feature functionality. So we did go Google, and we got that all at one time. So that was a huge benefit to us, and we were very excited to get there so quickly. So let's talk about some of the other benefits. We have a single supported platform, yay. We only use web-based. We only recommend and allow our users to be on email and calendar platform, web-based. It's so easy in terms of interoperability. Calendar sharing is there. We recommend Firefox as the browser of choice. And yes, there are wireless devices connected, and they connect easily. As Serena spoke, it's 25 gig mailboxes. So in some of our Exchange environments, they went from about 100 meg mailboxes to 25 gig. It's anytime, anywhere access, and we have our end users constantly speak about the value of this, that they can go home, they can hit a computer in their house without having to turn on their laptop, and they can get to their mail, and it's so easy and simple. Inherent in the solution, which was another tremendous benefit to us that we would have never gotten with the in-house Exchange or Lotus Notes solution, was an inherent disaster recovery. With true cloud computing, there is disaster recovery built right in, and you're not paying that extra fee for that. We were able to eliminate our entire server infrastructure, all of the Exchange servers, as well as the majority of the Lotus Notes servers. We were able to introduce quickly resource reservation capabilities, so the ability to schedule conference rooms. We stopped people having to actually be responsible for that, all online, all ready to go. It's also simplified our litigation hold process, which we're also very, very, very excited about. And the instant messaging is already built in. So those are the benefits that Konica Minolta has seen as a result of going Google. I'd like to ask Chris Henry now to join and speak and review the KMBS deployment of Google Apps.
Thank you, Kathy. So in our deployment, one of the first things that we did when we started looking at Google and we actually made the decision was we met with a deployment team from Google to discuss some of our deployment options. And really we came up with two options. The first one, which Google refers to as the Big Bang approach, is where we basically sort of choose a date and everybody gets cut over at the same time. They all get their accounts at the same time. We make training materials available, and one day you're on your legacy email system, and the next day you're on Google. There were some challenges with that approach for us, and we actually opted for the second approach, which is listed here, which is a phased rollout. The main reason that we opted to do that was because from a training perspective, we wanted to mandate people actually doing training. And using a phased rollout, that was really the most efficient and effective way for us to do that. So in terms of training, we created a series of webinars. We worked with a Google partner to create a series of webinars, and we posted those on our learning management system. And we also conducted a series of one-on-one trainings for sessions for our executives and our executive admins, and then some other live sessions as well. The key thing there, though, that was that for the webinars that we created one for mail, one for calendar, one for docs and sites, which are all included in Google Apps. But we did only mandate that people complete the mail training before they were issued their login credentials. So we set up a schedule starting in October of 2009. We did a small pilot starting with just a small group of IT users and our executive group. And then we moved on in December, we opened up that pilot to the rest of IT, and then we started to include some larger numbers of people from the business unit, the other business units, so that we can kind of go through with them, give them exposure to the product, get their feedback before we started the larger rollout, which we started in January of this year.
Hey, Chris, on the screen, I'm seeing the idea of really training one-on-one with the executive admins, and we know that those are the power users of any type of collaboration system. How important, I want to see if you feel, something that I've heard from other customers, that was that kind of a key group to get trained and get on board and have as kind of champions here, since they would be using it so extensively?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things actually it's covered in one of the following slides is the necessity, and one of the lessons that we learned of getting executives in early and using the product very early on. We had a steering committee that was comprised of a number of executives, and we got them on the pilot, got them in, got them using the product, and it made a huge difference in terms of people user adoption throughout the company.
Yes.
Similarly with the executive admins, those are the folks that are working, day in, day out with our executives, and they have their ear oftentimes. So it was really important that we got that group in early as well. Yeah, definitely.
Well, definitely we'll hear more about that as we move forward. Folks, keep those questions and comments coming in. We're about halfway through on the presentation, and again, right now with us is Chris Henry from Konica Minolta Business Solutions. And Chris, let me put it back in your hands. We'll charge forward.
All right, thanks. Okay, so moving forward with the deployment, some of the other things that we were considering was how do we support this going forward? So we worked with our help desk, made sure that those guys were fully trained. Google was good enough to provide us some Google guides, some specialists in the product, so that as we went through the deployment, any questions that came up, they were right there to answer. We also have a technical account manager who we now, we work with to funnel all of our technical questions, as well as working and gathering feedback and communicating about the product. As we went through this rollout, it was really, really important that we not only communicated about what was going to happen with the rollout, but as we went through the rollout, inviting people to training, getting feedback. As we did the pilot, we held weekly conference calls with some of the pilot users and just gathering their feedback, so that by the time we got to larger rollout, we had a lot of the questions that people and concerns that people had answered, and it just made the rollout go a lot more smooth for us. So I spoke earlier about training. One of the things that, I think in deploying a product, and certainly Google Apps, it was, for our users, it was very new. So we knew that we had to really put a concerted focus on training. And what we did was we created a Google training site. This is actually, it's built in Google Sites, which is part of Google Apps. That is an area that we drive our users back to every time. So starting with the rollout, with the pilot, we use the site as an area where we could post feedback, post information that we wanted to communicate out to our users. And even now, as we've gone up on Google and moving forward, whenever we put out some kind of product communication, some sort of update information, we always drive people back to the site as the one source for information concerning Google Apps.
Hey, Chris, Mike is on board with us today. Wants to know if your client base was really happy with the webinars as a training vehicle and tool.
Actually, yeah. I mean, we've had very good attendance at the webinars. We still get, I think, the webinars are one thing, but we have, our help desk who, we also ask people to call in and submit their questions as well. But the webinars have been a really great tool for us to really deliver the kinds of training that people need and are looking for. So it's been really helpful for us, yes.
All right, cool. Let's jump into some of those kind of major lessons learned, and maybe too, Chris, if you can point out what were one or two of the things that you hadn't anticipated or thought about that really stood out here as one of those lessons learned.
Well, as Cathy, one of the major lessons learned was, as Cathy mentioned earlier, we opted when we looked at Google Apps, we really wanted to go with a browser-based platform. We had a mix of clients that just wasn't working, so we figured the easiest way and most efficient way to get everybody on a single platform was to go all browser-based. However, people had clients, people had Outlook clients, they had Notes clients before, and so they were able to figure out, even though we didn't communicate that out to our users, they were able to figure out how to connect their Outlook client to Google via IMAP and get their email that way. People that were used to using Outlook, it was very difficult to try to get them out of that mode of using a client and into the browser. And one of the things that we didn't do up front was shut off IMAP and POP access, so people couldn't connect via that method. So that was something that we thought, in retrospect, we would have done sooner rather than later. One of the other lessons that we learned was training, again, mandatory training. That's something that we felt really strongly about. We still feel really strongly about, and it worked. It worked for our executives, it worked for our executive admins, and it worked for all of our users. I mean, we've even incorporated mandatory training as part of our onboarding process. When a new user starts, they have to go through training in Google Apps before they get access to the system, and it's worked out very well for us. Dual delivery, that's another thing. When you set up Google, you have the capability to maintain emails, have emails delivered to your existing system as well as Google. One of the things that we thought that we wanted to do that was important was provide people, especially on Notes, the ability to have that capability so there would be a smoother transition. However, we felt that it was very important to keep that time frame very short, and so we just did a 2-week time frame, and that also worked out very well. Again, as I mentioned before, getting executives in the pilot early, that was key, and then communication, talking about new updates in the product, talking about tips and techniques, how to do things more efficiently, and also doing ongoing training and additional training, just making sure that people kind of reinforcing what people have learned and how the new system works, as well as educating people on different and more efficient ways to do things. So here, this slide just covers a few of the end user challenges that we had. I mean, of course, as I mentioned before, we're switching from a client-based system to a completely new system for a lot of people. And even though a lot of folks, they've had either personal browser-based accounts, Hotmail, Gmail, what have you, it was new, especially threading, which is something that I think for everyone, for all of our users, was a challenge that we had to overcome. Sorting versus searching. People in their old clients were used to sorting messages as opposed to searching, so that was something that we had to really work and continue to work on educating people on how to do effective searches. Synchronizing the directories between our HR LDAP system, Postini, and Google, making sure that all the directories are synchronized, as well as some integration points. We had to develop some integration points between our CRM system and Google, basically replicating some functionality that was in our old system, moving that across to Google. So those are some of the major challenges that we faced there. And as I spoke to earlier, and this is sort of a continuing theme throughout a rollout of Google, what we've seen anyway, some of the ongoing things that we're doing to make sure that people are satisfied, that they are getting the most out of the product. And, that has to do with training, keeping training up. We're starting to go about, start thinking about how we can keep people interested using the product moving forward as far as using new and different features in the product, Google Docs, Google Sites, Google Groups, and Google Buzz, which are some of the other exciting things that are actually being made available in the product as well. And this slide speaks to some of the requests that people have made to us that we have made to Google. In going through the rollout and using the product, there have been some things that we've become used to in our legacy email systems that were not available in Google. And so these are some of the things that some of the major things anyway that our users have brought to us that we have since reported to Google, and happy to say that most of them, they have been, Google is listening and that they're working on the system. First and foremost is the ability to turn off email threading. Email threading has been, I think, the single biggest challenge for most of our users. And that seems to be the one area where people, if anybody says, well, I'm really having a challenge using Google, that's the one thing apart from searching. So that's been reported to Google, and they are working on that and making improvements and giving you the ability to turn off threading as well. One of the other things that we felt was important was in our on-premise email systems, we always had the ability to completely alert on the system, find out when something is not working right, what do we need to do to fix it, monitoring the system. And those are some of the things that we're looking for in the Google Apps product as well that are not currently there. The other is the ability to add more than one primary domain. Today we have our main email domain, which is kmbs.konicaminolta.us, but we also have a couple other primary domains for which we need to receive email. And currently there's only the capability of having one primary email domain in Google. So we're looking for some changes there. And then inserting images via print screen and then working with some of third-party vendors. The inserting images via print screen, that's something that we've, again, been used to working with in our existing systems. And that was something that we felt was a necessary requirement in the new system. We reported that to Google, and actually that's been functionality that's now introduced in the product in Google Chrome. And we're told it's being rolled out to other browsers as well. So now that we've gone Google, some of the things that we've learned, certainly we've been on Google now since January. It's been 5 months or so. What we see is that there are new feature functionalities consistently and very quickly and rapidly being introduced into the product. So a lot of the things that we had reported as feature requests are actually now appearing in the product. In fact, in the last couple of weeks, we saw, I think, about 2 or 3 product updates come through. The great thing about that is there is nothing to deploy on the client. There's no client to deploy. It's basically the feature gets turned on. It's immediately available to everyone, and that's a wonderful thing because it just speeds up our ability to be able to deliver the best feature functionality to our customers. And certainly with that, the support of our Google team, they have been always there from the beginning. Our sales team, our service team, they're always responsive to our concerns and working to make sure that they are addressed. And it goes a long way towards making sure that, at least saying to us, hey, Google's listening and they're really committed to the product and giving us confidence that we made the right decision for our company, for our users. So with that, I'd like to turn it back over to James, and we'll get into a little Q&A.
We actually will. I want to bring up one question right now for you, Chris. This one came in from Rob, and Rob was wanting to know, did you have any issues with importing old mail into the new system? If so, can you talk about that? If not, it'll be a short answer.
Okay. So we actually made the decision as part of our deployment to not migrate email. We felt that based on some of our conversations with our deployment team and some of the experiences of some other Google Apps customers, that it would have been, well, for a couple of things actually. It would have, number one, stretched out our time frame for the rollout, and that there were also technical issues with doing that. So we opted not to do that. We didn't migrate any mail or calendar. The only thing that we actually migrated was contacts.
All right, Rob. Hey, appreciate the question. We have more questions that we'll get to as we go forward here. Also, Chris was just mentioning about some of the features as they get rolled out and get shared. Again, there's nothing much that the users have to do. It's just available to folks right then. So Serena's going to talk about that in just a few moments. Also, some questions have come in around security. They always do. We're going to provide you with a little bit of information on that and really direct you to some locations to get more information about security, so you can choose that. You notice that I did put up another poll question on the screen, and this was just get an idea of what are some of your main drivers out there where you're looking to reduce your total cost of ownership, modernize your collaboration platform, increase some of that flexibility and scalability. Something that was probably, and Cathy, you might chime in here, the idea of freeing up IT time to focus on strategic initiatives. I bet you if you were on this as a user, that was probably something that you would have marked late last year as one of the reasons that you were driving towards Google Apps.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. All right, and capitalize on latest industry innovations. And, again, we're allowing you to pick a couple of options here, so when we share the numbers now, you'll see that they're not going to add up to 100%, but we've got most folks on here basically saying that they want to do things like reduce that total cost of ownership of their system, and as Cathy agreed, she would have been doing what you said you're looking for, is to free up that IT time to focus on those strategic initiatives. So not much of a surprise there, but appreciate you sharing with us. Again, one more poll question a bit later on in the presentation. But right now, Serena, let's kind of put it back in your hands. We'll talk for a couple of minutes here again about security, about some of those innovations, and then we'll open it up to the rest of the questions.
Okay, thanks, James. Security is obviously probably the number one question we get, since if you move to Google Apps, you would be moving to the cloud, so to speak, and letting Google do some of the things that you may have done before on your behalf. And security, of course, is one of those things. What we've done is put together an information site so that you can basically educate yourself a little bit on how we think about security, if this is something that you would want us to do on your behalf. So we think about security along three different dimensions. One is really about the people, the second is about the process, and the third is about the technology. Obviously, security is very important to us because not only are we working to secure the data that we're storing on your behalf with Google Apps, but we're also obviously working to secure the data that runs through our systems, whether it's from Google Search or any of our other applications. We also maintain credit card numbers for people who use Google Checkout, as an example. So security is very important to us to help maintain the trust that you've placed in us as consumers as well as enterprise customers. We hire top security experts from around the world, but we also are always collaborating with outside industry experts too, to understand what the latest threat vectors are and to make sure that we're on the forefront of protecting against those. We had a webcast where we showcased some of our Google experts on a security panel, and that's really kind of one of the best ways I would suggest that you can meet some of these people for yourself by looking for a webcast called How Google Tackles IT Security. We also invite every year on an annual basis third-party experts to come in and audit the systems and processes that we've put in place. So we hope that we've implemented high standards, but we also want to make sure we get audited against those high standards by an independent third party. Just like you would have someone come in and audit your financials if you're a public company, for example, we do that with our annual SAS 70 Type 2 audit process. And finally, our data centers. This is obviously a big asset for Google, and this is where we implement a lot of the learnings that we get from industry experts and the processes. One of the things that I would encourage everyone to do is if you follow the link at the page at the bottom of the slide, there's a security white paper that talks about the kind of technologies that we employ to secure the data centers. On a high level, of course, just in terms of data replication, your data will be replicated across servers, but then of course across data centers, so that if there's a data center in one location that goes down for whatever reason, there will be instant failover to another data center outside that geographical area. But when we store data as well on a server or in a data center, we are not going to be storing it in plain text. We shard that data, and we also obfuscate that data so that it's not readable to the human eye. These are some of the technologies that we employ on your behalf, and again, they're detailed in our security backgrounder. In terms of security, it's obviously a big decision, and we encourage you to do the due diligence yourself to see how our security practices, our experts, our processes, et cetera, compare to what you're currently doing today. We talk a lot about a different model when it comes to cloud-based computing, and Chris and Cathy really picked up on this a lot. We don't release in 3-year cycles. We don't release in 6-month cycles. Since the Internet is our platform, we release when a feature is ready. And in 2009 alone, we had over 100 feature releases, and I have actually been remiss in updating our 2010 slide because we've had many major announcements. I did see some questions come up about whether you can turn off particular services, and you can absolutely turn off particular services for your users. For example, if you don't want people using instant messaging, you can turn them off. When it's a high-level service, you can turn off for your employees if you wish. But we feel that the benefit of cloud computing is that you actually get these services when they're ready, or these features when they're ready, and you don't have to wait another 3 years before the next iteration. One of the other things that we encourage people to do is just search out other customers, and everyone has had a different experience moving to Google Apps. Some folks do migrate data, some folks don't migrate data, as Konica Minolta did not do. Some folks do it in a big bang approach, some folks do it in a phased approach. It really kind of depends upon your user set, your requirements, et cetera. We've showcased several customer stories, and they're available on YouTube, and feel free to search them out. If you are an EDU customer, we've had several large deployments with EDU customers, particularly the student population. We don't have any minimum seat limit, and we certainly don't have any maximum seat limit. So if you want 1 seat or 10,000 seat or 100,000 seats, it's all the same to us. One thing that I will mention is next week for the government folks that are on our webcast, the City of Los Angeles will be updating us about their deployment experience thus far, and that's next Thursday, and I encourage you to search that out too. And with that, James, I'll hand it back to you.
Perfect, and we still have a good 10 minutes or so left for questions that have been coming in from the audience. I want to get one from Tanya. And Chris, this one coming out to you. Back to the idea of training. Tanya wondering, do you keep on continually creating your own versions of training videos? Do you use some type of video library that's prepared by Google and then just share those with your users? Talk about that for a moment.
So we actually did a little bit of both. So during the rollout, we worked with our training vendor, our training partner, to create actual videos specific to our needs. And we've also since then we've done a couple live sessions that we recorded, and we posted those to our learning management system as well. But we've also augmented those with videos that were done by Google, and we post those to our site as well. So we use a mix of both.
All right. Final poll question on the screen right now. You can pick 3 of those. And again, this is just where you want to get some more information, some topic areas. We'll collect these results, share them with the Google team. So when they're in contact with you, they'll have an idea of what you're looking for. So go ahead and answer that as we continue on with questions here. Cathy, there was one that I had queued up for you here. This one came in. There were actually a couple. It looks like Terry and Christine as well. We're asking an idea about increased bandwidth. Did you see that you had to increase out at some of your locations as a result of this migration and now increased Internet use?
So that's actually a great question. We actually spent a lot of time on that subject during the implementation phase. And we were about to increase the bandwidth out to each of the branches in anticipation of going live with Google Apps. And I made a decision to hold on that to see what performance really looked like and to see if we really required it. With the theory that in our Lotus Notes environment we had replication going back and forth over that bandwidth, so therefore much of this traffic was already happening today. One of the things that I didn't hear mentioned today is that with Google Apps, when you go to read a document, you actually read it. If you're browser-based, you read it in the browser. You can download it if you want to, but many times you just read it right online there, so that's not coming down the wire. The net result is we held and waited, and at least to our branch offices we held and waited, and we have not found a need yet to increase our bandwidth. Now on the Internet side, obviously that's all net new. Our email servers were in-house in our data center, so we did provide additional capacity out to the Internet for Google Apps because that was net new bandwidth requirements.
All right, thanks for that, Cathy. Majority of the audience voting here on this last poll and sharing that, again, over 80% of you or so have clicked on that final box, Tools for Migration and Deployment. Let me share with you, if you click the Download Slides button from your player, you'll get all the slides that you saw today, plus a bonus 3 little appendix that we have here. That final slide in the deck has got additional links that are all about data migration and available tools. So that's one of the things you can do. The other thing I encourage you to do, we're going to get to more questions here, but if we don't get to your question today, we do forward these on to Google, but a proactive way that you can get out there and get your questions addressed possibly quicker is by clicking on that Speak with an Account Manager Today link under the related resources. And again, you can just type in your question or comment there, and someone from Google will get back to you very quickly. Again, we will forward all the questions that go unanswered to Serena and her team, but that's a proactive way that you can get some of those questions possibly answered a bit quicker. Serena, let me bring in some technical questions here from the audience. Jeff wanting to know, Google Apps able to integrate with current Active Directory server?
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, you can use any LDAP that you want. And I'm not sure, Cathy and Chris, what you've used for directory syncing services, but we have a Google directory sync service tool that can be used.
That's what we use for Postine too as well, yeah.
Okay.
And Serena, keep it in your court. Glenn asking and stating he has spam filtering hardware in place, wants to know, would that have an impact on using Google Apps?
No, it doesn't have an impact. We have many customers who decide not to use spam filtering in addition to Google Apps, because within Google Apps you actually have 2 layers of spam filtering. You have Postini, antivirus, anti-spam, but also there's a native antivirus, anti-spam within Gmail itself as well. But if you choose to use whatever you're using today, that's also fine.
All right, Cathy, I want to bring a couple your direction. Jim asking here, and I believe you stated this earlier, there was motivation and you chose Firefox as a standard browser. Why did you do that versus IE?
Or Chrome. Yeah, thank you. We made that decision, again, the time frame is important, in October of 2009. At that time, we wanted to standardize on one browser. So the browser of choice had to integrate with IE in some way, so it had to have an IE plugin. So the choice, at the time, Chrome did not have that functionality. It does now. So the choice became between IE and Firefox, and quite frankly, IE does not work. Google Apps does not work well in IE. It presents much better in Firefox and even better in Chrome. We are currently evaluating Chrome as a potential, maybe migrating from Firefox to Chrome or offering an additional browser choice. But that was the reason we made that decision at the time.
All right, gotcha. Another one I want to keep over with you, Cathy, and this one has to do with still using Microsoft Office, or have you already transitioned and are using Google Apps and Spreadsheet and things like that? Jason wants to know.
So, okay, good question, Jason. And actually just spent the last week working on the Microsoft Enterprise Agreement, so I can answer that question, and the answer is yes, we are still using Microsoft Office. While we really love Google Apps and it has its place, it is not a full functioning replacement for Microsoft Office yet. Google is maybe not stating that outright, but they certainly are enhancing the product. But it's one of those things that I don't think the product is there yet, and therefore we don't see it as a full replacement yet.
I want to, before we wrap up, we'll probably squeeze another question or two here. I want to put out a short little survey to the audience. So everyone, hopefully you have your pop-up blockers turned off. If not, hit your Control and C button. Hold those down for the next 3, 2, and 1 seconds, and that should push out that survey to you. 6 questions there, just a little feedback on the presentation, and we do appreciate you taking time to answer some of those questions. With that, let's get back into a couple more questions. There was a question in here as I scroll back down, Cathy, had to do with like offline access, laptop users and accessing information offline. What can you say to that, how you deal with that, et cetera?
So Google Apps has an offline mode. So if somebody's on a plane and they don't have internet access, they can work in offline mode just as you would with a Lotus Notes client or an Outlook client. The solution is there, and that's web-based.
All right. Serena, a couple quick ones I'm going to throw your direction. Organizations who switch from Exchange to Google Apps, how do they deal with public folders?
That comes up all the time, and up until recently I had a couple of options for you, and now I actually have more than that. One of the things when you're switching over from Exchange or any other system to Google Apps is that you certainly need to sort of do a feature comparison. I've seen a lot of questions asking about what features are there in Exchange that aren't in Google Apps, et cetera. And one of the things that we find is that we may not have the specific feature as, for example, with public folders, but we have options for you. And hopefully these options actually improve the user experience. So what we've seen customers do with public folders, for example, is in one instance, one customer, we're using folders basically to sort of share information with people in separate offices, and they migrated all of that document information to Google Sites. Google Sites then provided the ability for them to much more easily set up navigation for the different types of documents, as well as provided search across the Google site, across all the documents. And then also Google Sites allowed them to start doing more interesting things like embedding rich media, photos and videos and things like that, and really collaborating on the content more than just sort of storing it. We've also had customers use Google Groups functionality in place of public folders. So if public folders is sort of a gathering place, so to speak, for groups of your employees, you might want to implement them on Google Groups, where they can have a homepage, if you will, for their group that can store that shows the list of messages, et cetera, that they may be sending to each other. And then finally, if you're using public folders simply just to store information, Google Docs allows you the ability to upload any file. So you can certainly upload an MS Word document. You can convert it into a Google format, or you can actually leave it in its native format. Or you can upload a video, and that's just stored in Google Docs as a video file that can be shared or downloaded by anyone else. So there's a few different options, and that's kind of the way we encourage people to look at Google Apps too.
All right. That is Serena Satyasai, Product Marketing with Google. And Serena, as always, appreciate you being on Tech Republic today and sharing today's information and an event.
Thanks so much, James.
What we'll be doing is forwarding on to Serena the rest of the questions that we didn't get to today, so they'll have those on the back end. Cathy, Lilli was also with us from Konica Minolta Business Solutions. And Cathy, appreciate your time and effort on the presentation today.
Thank you very much, James.
And to Chris Henry as well. Thanks for going through the deployment and some of the things you guys learned out there and answering a couple of these questions. Chris, do appreciate the time.
Thanks, James. It was my pleasure.
For the audience, we'll keep the player open for a couple minutes. You can click on those related resources. Again, click the download slides, get a bit of an appendix. It'll give you another slide talking about some of the data migration tools that are available to you. Also, click the email friend link. That's going to send an invite off to a colleague. They can register and come back to the on-demand version. We have recorded today's event. That'll be available 24 hours from now. All of you will get a reminder email bringing you back so you can catch up on anything that Chris and Cathy shared, or if you missed any of the event, you can catch up on anything that you missed if you joined us a bit late. So with that, on behalf of everyone at Konica Minolta and over at Google and, of course, our Tech Republic team, we appreciate all of you in the audience for taking time and joining us today. My name is James Hilliard, and we will talk to you down the road.